Guys, welcome. This video will walk through two of the included workbooks in the inventory module of the Furniture Flipping 101 program's business management course. Keeping track of inventory and calculating the cost of goods sold can take a lot of time and bring a lot of frustration. I got tired of looking up receipts to find out what I paid for the hardware or paint I put into a piece. As a solution, I created two workbooks to track inventory and calculate your cost of goods sold and posted price. I am sharing them with the business management students to use in their business. Check out the enrollment link in the description below. Let's begin by opening your inventory workbook. Here you'll track your inventory asset purchases. Each purchase is entered in your bookkeeping software and here in the workbook. And while that might seem redundant to have to post the purchase twice, it saves you a lot of headaches and time spent looking up prices. Plus, you can use it for your year-end books, which is a must when filing your business taxes. The inventory workbook provides a functional system to track your inventory value and calculate your cost of goods sold using the price of the inventory assets per unit. What your bookkeeping software does is it tracks your inventory assets in dollar buckets, allowing you to remove the dollar value from inventory rather than trying to use it to look up the cost per item. And that is much easier for bookkeeping, but it doesn't work well for pricing your cost of goods sold. Watch the inventory video in the bookkeeping module for more about entering the purchases there. Let's get started so you can see how it works. You can start on the dashboard to see your in-stock inventory. Since we haven't entered any data, the charts are blank. We'll come back to this after we've entered some inventory. I've added this handy interactive toolbar at the top to make it faster to move around the workbook. You can also use the tabs at the bottom in the traditional Excel method. To enter your inventory asset purchases, use the inventory button or the in-stock inventory tab at the bottom. Take your receipts and enter your data. Here I've entered some purchases so we can use them in assembling pieces later in the video. Start with the date of the receipt, the category, subcategory, and brand if applicable. I categorize anything wet as paint and anything dry as a transfer, so I use subcategories for waxes, primers, and top coats under the paint category, and paper, foils, rub-on transfers, and fabrics under the transfers category. If you encounter a new subcategory, you can add it to your lists. I will show you that shortly. I use the purchase location to track my purchases by retailer. You can then use the slicers at the top to filter by a category, subcategory, brand, or purchase location. The description is how you'll look up this purchase again, so use something meaningful and specific. The total purchase price is the receipt amount less tax. Quantity is the number of items purchased at that time. I used dollars as the quantity for my paints. This way I can estimate I used a dollar amount rather than trying to calculate fractions. Later, when we start using the inventory, you'll see why this is a much more effective method. The spreadsheet divides the total purchase price by the quantity. You can add a note on what you plan to use the product on if that helps you later, or any other note you want to add. Before we move on, I'll show you how to add to your subcategory and brand lists. Go to the List tab with the button at the top or scroll along the bottom of the workbook. Select the last item in the list of the table and use the Tab key to add a line, then type in your new subcategory. You can sort the list to keep it alphabetical. If you want to use another inventory category, add it to the main inventory category table and then create a new table. This new table is for the subcategory. Type the name of the table and then any subcategories under that. Then select the data and hit Control-T or go to the top and insert a table. Make sure that it has headers. Then go to the new table tab that appears when the cell is selected and rename the table to match the newly created category, and the name must match exactly. I'll delete these, but you can add any other category you would wish to use. You can check out the instructions worksheet if you need a refresher on how to do that, and some other steps we will get to. Let's pop back to the dashboard now and see what the charts look like there. Refresh the charts and you can see your stocks at a glance. You can filter by the fields on the left. Let's quickly look at the Office Assets tab. This tab is where I keep track of purchases that I depreciate for tax purposes at year end. These inventory assets aren't used in the cost of goods sold assembly, but this is a handy location to enter their purchase. I also have a separate sheet I use for my taxes, and I use this sheet just to keep track throughout the year. We will return to the other inventory sections, inventory to print and inventory summary, once we have gone through the cost of goods sold workbook and updated our inventory. Let's do that next. Open the cost of goods workbook. This is the cost of goods sold workbook for calculating the input costs for your assembled items. You will add each item you assemble and calculate both its input costs and its markup to determine its posted price. This workbook also has an instruction page. The Summary tab tracks your assembled inventory assets. We'll come back to this worksheet once we have assembled an item. The Inventory Numbers tab is your running list of inventory numbers and descriptions. You can follow any format you wish and copy them down or type in your own. I usually use F for furniture, D for decor, and C for commissioned pieces. Here, I've entered some sample inventory numbers as a starting point. The descriptions here are specific to that piece of furniture, so use a custom description to identify the piece you are calculating. I use this description in my assembled item in my bookkeeping software. See the video in the bookkeeping module. Next, we'll copy over the template so we have a fresh sheet to enter data and not lose our template. Let's create a backup copy of the template. If you do happen to copy over the template, you have a spare. Make sure you create another backup if you need to use it. A caveat is the link in the top menu will not work if you copy over the template, so try not to do that, or you'll need to update the link with the template button on the menus. So hold Control on a PC and drag to the right, or right-click, move or copy, select Create a Copy, and select where to place the copy. Now right-click and rename this new tab with the inventory number you just created. Select the inventory number cell and type equals, then return to the inventory number tab and select the inventory number. You do have to use the tab at the bottom of the worksheet though. The menu bar buttons don't work in formulas. Then hit enter. Notice how the description is now linked. We will move down to the cost of goods calculation section. Here you enter all the costs you put into the piece you assemble. Select the category and enter the quantity used. Remember to use dollars quantity for the paint. Look up the price per item in your inventory workbook. You can choose to update your inventory as you go, or go back and update it once you're done assembling the item. For paints, it's fairly easy to enter the price of an item, but you should keep track of your remaining inventory for that particular paint so you don't use more than is in stock. You can add your hours in here for calculation purposes, but I do not recommend posting them as expenses in your bookkeeping software unless you pay yourself a wage from your business. As always, consult with a tax professional familiar with your area's tax laws. The Adjust Inventory column is to check off as you update the inventory. We will do the inventory adjustments after we're done in this workbook. The costs will be subtotaled to the right and in the Items Assembly Calculations table at the bottom. This table is to assemble or post your items in your bookkeeping software. I post my paint and transfers to consumables, but you can choose whatever system works best for you and your tax laws. See the inventory video in the bookkeeping module. Now that you've completed the costs, let's look at the posted price in the item overview table. In the Planning Your Business module, you worked out a markup that covered your fixed and variable costs. If you include your time in the cost of goods calculation, your markup should be lower than had you not. See the list page to adjust your markup percentage. The markup calculates an estimated minimum selling price. Use what you have learned in the business management course on how to set your prices. Type that in the posted price cell. You can also enter the status and the date posted. The status can also be updated on the lists worksheet. You can change the current ones or add to the list. I print the form once I've entered all the pre-sale data. Once you sell the item, you can either write on the form or ideally go back into the spreadsheet and update the electronic file. I like to track how long a piece takes to sell and where the piece sells. Entering a payment form helps when you match your income to your sales. You can then post the sale information to your bookkeeping software using the code shown or your own accounts. See the chart of accounts video in the bookkeeping module. Let's link the data to the summary sheet now. Go to the summary worksheet and type equals in the inventory number cell. Then return to the sheet you created and select the B3 cell. Type Enter. Now on the summary sheet, select the inventory cell, wait till you see the plus sign, and drag the cursor across to the Sold On Platform cell. If you update the data on the assembled item sheet, this page will update. You'll now have an overview of your profit and costs, plus how long it takes to sell an item. Unfortunately, the formatting doesn't transfer over, so you will have to adjust it as you go. Repeat this process with any new items. You can create a hyperlink to the items worksheet by selecting the inventory number in the summary sheet, choosing Insert Hyperlink, Place in this document, and choose the tab in the top list, and then hit OK. This is handy to get around the workbook when you have several items. Now we will go back to the inventory workbook and update the inventory we used to assemble this piece. Go to the inventory sheet. Work through the COGS workbook sheet item by item. Filter the list to help narrow down the options. You can clear the filter here. If there's an existing amount in the quantity used column, add the quantity used to that figure. Don't enter a value to take the inventory to a negative amount. For actual items like hardware, you should not be out by any amounts, or you have entered the wrong item previously or miscounted. You can adjust these numbers at year-end to reflect the actual amounts in stock. When you buy new items of the same inventory, like the same size paint, brand, and color, create a new line item. Use up the old item before using the new stock quantity. This is a FIFO, or first in, first out system. It uses the most accurate pricing since you aren't combining and averaging the item's cost. It also helps you track price increases and decide if you need to find a new supplier. You can add more line items by using the Insert command. Do this in the blank cells and make sure the formula is copied down. Okay, now that you've entered all your costs of goods sold, let's look at how to take inventory. There are two sheets, Inventory to Print and Inventory Summary. First, we'll look at the Inventory to Print. Refresh your table, then print off the sheet. You can adjust your print area by dragging the edges of the area when in Page Break Preview mode. You can also change the table's design if you like. Now, take your business's inventory, count each countable item, note which ones are wrong, and add a plus or minus and the amount to change by writing these numbers on the sheet. Return to your inventory spreadsheet. Here, on the far right, you'll find the adjusting columns. Select the current year's column. Enter the values to adjust your spreadsheet to match your actual inventory values. For negatives, use a minus sign. Check off or cross the items as you go. Now, let's compare your bookkeeping values with your inventory. Go into your bookkeeping software and print off your year-end trial balance. This trial balance should reflect all purchases for your fiscal year. Go to the Inventory Summary tab and refresh the table. Now, enter the trial balance amounts for each category listed. Manually subtract the two values. Start with the inventory value and subtract the trial balance value. Type equals, select the inventory value, then type minus and select the trial balance value, then hit enter. Repeat for each category. The difference is the amount you need to adjust your bookkeeping software by. Go to your bookkeeping software and do a general journal entry, or use your software's inventory adjustment if it has one. You will apply a debit against the account used for that inventory asset if you need to increase the amount in your books, or a credit if you need to reduce the amount. Use a negative number to apply a credit. Here I entered the hardware at negative 1.15, and the balancing account is 5130, inventory write-off account. As I've explained in a few places, I use a consumable inventory expense for my paint and transfer, so I would not adjust my books for these two accounts. But if you keep track of these as countable inventory assets, then use the accounts you have set up in your chart of accounts. I still track the paint transfers in the inventory workbook so I can accurately price my inputs for my assembled pieces. I can make an inventory adjustment video for anyone interested. Please let me know in the comments or message me on the course website. Now that you've finished your year-end, you can save this file as next year's. Then, in the next year's file, you can delete any rows with zero quantity in stock. The data will still be available in the previous year's file you just finished. If you run out of columns in the adjustment area, you can insert 2 new ones and copy the formula down. Follow the same naming conventions. Make sure you update the quantity in stock column to include the adjusted amount. Starting in the top row, select the formula in the formula bar and add a plus sign and select the new cell. Then hit Tab or Enter. Then fill down. You can hide the previous year's columns to condense the amount of data on the screen. Then you can unhide them by selecting over top of them and choosing Unhide. See the Instructions tab for full details on how to do this. That brings us to the end of the video on the Inventory and Cost of Goods Sold workbooks. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below.